Good evening and welcome everyone to our public hearing tonight. And this is a public hearing for a permit application for Highland Knolls and Bethel Greens at Highland Knolls Residential Developments in Livingston County. My name is Ryan Blazek. I'm with Eagles Environmental Support Division. I'll be helping to moderate the public hearing tonight, and we'll introduce our other staff on the line here in a minute. But first, I just have some logistical things to go through. I just want to go through kind of the agenda for tonight. I'm going to start off with the introduction, which we're doing right now. And then the biggest thing to know is that tonight's public hearing is actually going to be in two parts. There's an informational session where the applicant or the applicant's representative will provide a presentation on the project, and then followed by a question and answer session. So that's kind of the first part. And then we'll go through ways to submit a comment on the application. And then we'll actually start the official hearing. And that'll be how you can make an official comment for the record on this application will be during that official hearing part. And we'll go through how to do all of that here in a little bit. And then we'll talk about where to find other information and who to contact if you have further questions. For those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, the platform we're using tonight, all lines are going to be muted during this hearing. You can submit your questions at any time using the question box in the Zoom toolbar, which you should see at the bottom. When we get to the Q&A session, you also have a chance to either raise your hand and we'll unmute you to ask your question, or you can type your question in the question box. And then we're also recording this hearing. So this hearing will be on our YouTube channel in a few days, and you'll be able to access it then. And we'll also send you a link to that so that you can watch it again if you need or like to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask Jeff, and it looks like Mary's on the line as well, to unmute your microphones and your cameras if possible and introduce yourselves.
Thanks, Ryan. Yep, my name is Jeff Pierce. I'm environmental quality analyst for the Lansing District Office and in charge of reviewing this application. I'll also be acting as the hearings officer for today's hearing.
I'm Mary Vanderlaan, the district supervisor for the Lansing District Office.
All right, thank you, Mary and Jeff. So now we're going to move into that public information session. We're going to, I guess, is there anything you want to say, Jeff, on this presentation here? Or I think we have a representative who's representing the applicant online who we're going to unmute, right?
Yeah, I believe Brett Buckholtz, who's representing the applicant, is going to speak for the presentation here. So we can just, I guess, defer to him to do the presentation, and it'll kind of give a description of what the application is proposing and detail the project.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, it looks like Brett is on here, so we'll unmute Brett here. It looks like, Brett, you're unmuted on our end.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, yep, we can hear you, Brett. Before you start, just a couple things. I have the presentation here, so just cue me when you want me to switch slides for you. And then also, if you can try to keep it to 10 or 15 minutes, because what we're going to do is we're going to have the Q&A session after that for about 10 or 15 minutes, and we're going to try at around 6:30 to 6:35 around that to start the actual hearing portion of this. So with that, you can go ahead and take it away. Just let me know when to switch slides.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I guess let's go to the next slide, which really this is kind of this is the existing site, which is vacant. And it's along the north side of M59, and M59 is MDOT right of way. There's an actual right of way that runs along the north side of 59, which is around 75 to 80 feet from the center of M59 itself. And so really the total acreage of the parcel measured out to the center of 59 is about 23 acres. But however, when we focus on the development area. Really, it's the 21.2 acres, which is the net acreage. And then anything, between the easement line and out into the road there, that's really MDOT right away. We are doing obviously some cleanup and improvements there within the right of way, but for the most part, we're talking about the development here. And so in general, an overview of the site here, the site drains from the northeast corner to the kind of the southwest or westerly southwest corner. And that's about a distance of about 1,000 feet. And then the elevations where they're higher up in the northeast corner, above sea level, the elevation is 1,000, and down to the lower level, it's at 920. So it's about a vertical drop of about 80 feet. The two wetlands on the property are marked out there in the southwest corner, and those are, in general, about 3/10 to 4/10 of an acre in area. And if anything, you can see kind of the slope, the shading there. If you got the lighter shade, it's a flatter slope, and if you have the darker shade or the red shade, it's the steeper slopes, obviously. The site has about 6 inches of topsoil on top, and based on the soil borings obtained on the site, the underlying site soils are predominantly brown sand, very sandy soils conducive to really infiltration. And you can go to the next slide. So, and this kind of highlights the proposed development, and the proposed development consists of the 3-story building up in the northeast corner, and then the ranch townhomes kind of in the mid to west part of the site, and of course the drives and the parking islands there are shown. And again, the slope table there shows where it's steeper, where it's lighter. It's flatter. When we're really our developed slopes are, we're keeping it under that 1-on-3 slope to help flatten the site out. And so with the flattening of the site, basically we're kind of taking away the slope and trying to tabletop the site to help flatten out the open spaces and aid with the infiltration and the groundwater recharge on site. We're using walls to step and flatten the site from the existing slopes, and we've got swales along the back of the walls, in front of the walls, which kind of help lengthen out the drainage patterns there. And we're trying to promote infiltration there. Everything we're trying to do is, promote infiltration on the upper end of the site here. The proposed topsoil layers that we've got that are going to go back in are going to be less than what's out there now, from 2 to 4 inches, and that should help with the, reducing the thickness of the topsoil layer will help with infiltration. And we're maintaining an existing vegetative buffer, along with the wetlands along the west property line, and that goes over 1,000 feet there, and I think we're averaging about 60 feet. It's a little narrower in some spots, but wider in others. So you can go to the next slide. So the lighter blue shade represents the crosshatch represents kind of the open space area, which will be the lawn, landscape areas, non-pavements, non-building. The darker blue kind of represents areas that we're incorporating into our stormwater system to help with the infiltration with swales. So we've got a total of about 11 acres of open space that we're going to maintain there with vegetation and landscape area, and that's about almost 52% of the site area is going to be maintained as open space. And from a township standpoint, that's exceeding their requirement of 40%. And then the darker blue areas, which is about 71,000 square feet, those are the areas that we're anticipating, to help promote, infiltration in groundwater recharge, and again, incorporating that into the stormwater design. So the remaining open space area as well should help contribute to that, just because of the underlying sandy soils. And in general, I think the sandy soils, anticipating at least a 1 inch per hour infiltration rate. If you calculate over a 6-hour period over that area, you're in excess of 2 inches over the entire site in terms of volume. And also, just because of the sand, we're emitting under drain on the, on your typical catch basin that's in the parking area that usually you would have to kind of drain, water from the subgrade into the catch basins and the storm system. Well, we're emitting that. And again, the sand is helping. So we're not collecting that subgrade. We want that to get back into the groundwater recharge cycle. And so if you go to the next slide. So we have really 2 site detention basins, which are, and I might have you go back a slide here where I can kind of, if you look at the very north middle part of the site, that is the east basin, and that basin really is collecting kind of the northeast quadrant of that parking lot and that building area for the 3-story building. And so that basin alone is collecting that water, and then the basin there is basically going to have a restricted outlet, which is via an inlet filter or a filter type standpipe, with small holes drilled into the side of it with clean stone around the outside of it to help, again, slow that water down as it leaves the site, and also to try to help promote infiltration there. That, of course, would outlet to the downstream storm conveyance system, which further bypasses into the townhome area. And then the basin for that area is in the lower southwest corner of the property. And so, and if we go back to the next slide, go to the next slide. So, and really those 2 basins, the way we size those are using the new draft Livingston County Drain Commission office's 100-year storm detention sizing. And those are going to have permanent pools. So those will be wet basins. And the total detention volume storage that we're providing is really over and above the minimum that is required based on the new calculations. So in addition, we're taking that volume plus whatever infiltration volume is being incorporated as part of the storm management system. And there is a credit that in general can be taken out of the above ground basins, but we're not doing that. We want to incorporate that into the system. And then if you go and go back to the slide behind, before this one, the west basin or the lower southwest corner, that actually has a pre-basin or a sediment forebay on the north end of it. So that's really where the stormwater system will outlet to first. And that basin, that sediment forebay is actually sized, much greater than the minimum sizing requirement based on the county's standard. And really, because of the infiltration, we're just not taking credit for the infiltration there. We're just trying to get that as large as we can to help treat that water and collect it. And then that will filter through its own standpipe, again, another filter standpipe. Yeah, and then it drains into the main part of the basin, which is south of that. And so then you can go back to the next slide for me. So, and it's that 4-bay size, 300 times more, 300% more than what is required. And we're trying to help control that sediment collection. One thing to note too is the East Basin itself. If you go back a slide, the East Basin up at the top, the storm collection for that whole area really outlets into the basin itself. But before it does that, there's a pre-treatment structure, which is a BMP, mechanical BMP, to help collect suspended solids out of that to help pre-treat that before it drains into that top East Basin. So everything coming out of that top East Basin is clean and it's restricted, and before it leaves that basin. And then it drains down to the 4-bay ultimately into that 4-bay, then it collects into the main basin. And at that point, there is another standpipe in the main basin, which again acts as a filter and a restrictor before it drains into what would be another pre-treatment device, which is a post restricted pre-treatment device. It's really a third means of pre-treatment, which is not required by the county. So we're trying to set up another point where water can be treated before it leaves, and it's leaving at a restricted rate into the settling pool. And if you go to the next slide again.
Yeah, and then Brett, just a heads up, if you could, be great if you could wrap up the next couple minutes to keep us on time.
Will do.
Thanks.
So if anything, we've got the level spreader. The outlet is really sized per LCDC to mimic agricultural and pre-development rates. And then again, we're required to have a maintenance agreement to review the storm system and to do an annual review for maintenance. And you go to the next slide. And one thing to point out too is the letter that's shown there is the letter from the township engineer, basically stating that we've designed the system in excess of this county's requirements. And you go to the next slide. So the soil erosion, again, we're controlling soil erosion here on this site. We understand the slopes, but we're in, as well as the environmental issues. The project is following the design guidelines and best management practices per U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. It's going to follow the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake protocol best management practices to protect the species. We've actually got a double set silt fence, actually, that we're adding another row of silt fence there as well. There's going to be a triple. So that's getting actually beefed up. And anything that's being used out there will be all natural fiber mulch blankets for the no plastic, and that's for the snake. Next slide, please. So the landscape plan, I'll wrap up with this, no new plant materials that are considered invasive. No new trees or plants that are considered invasive will be planted on site. And all natural fertilizers, no phosphorus. There'll be an annual review for invasive species management, such as Phragmites, etc. And then any treatment of invasive species by a licensed pesticide applicator. And that basically concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you, Brett, for providing that for us today. So with that, we're going to move on to the question and answer session. And just to provide some clarification with where we're at, this is going to be a question and answer session related to the application. And then it'll be after this, the next part will be where you can make your official statement for the record on the project. So with this question and answer session, you can either submit your question in the Q&A box, which you should see at the bottom of the screen. You can click the hand icon in Zoom, which you'll also see near that location. Or if you're on the phone, you can select #2, and that will raise your hand for us in Zoom. And then I can call on you using the last 4 digits of your phone number to ask your question, and we'll unmute you on our end. So I'm kind of going to go in between the Q&A box and people who have their hands raised and just ask those of our panelists here. And so I do have a couple here, so that are in the Q&A box. So I'm going to start there. All right. So the first question is, who will oversee and enforce the annual review for the required drainage system maintenance? What is the protocol if it does not meet the requirements?
So I believe that would be the county would be overseeing that.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. And then there's kind of a, I guess, this related part of this question. How often are 100-year size storms happening in this area? And I'm not sure if that's something that we can answer or not. I don't have any recommendations, Jeff, or.
Well, that's a good question. So the 100-year storm event, the reason it's termed the 100-year storm event is it is rated at occurring at a potential of a 1% chance every year. And so that is extrapolated out to over a 100-year period. It will likely happen once over a 100-year period. Now that's probabilities. There's always a chance that they could happen more frequently than that. But the way that storms are kind of rated that way is based off of their probability chance. So in this case, when we call it a 100-year storm, what that means is that it has a 1% chance out of any given year to occur. Now, of course, with climate change, the frequency and intensity of storms has increased, and that might actually change what may have been considered a 100-year storm event 30, 50 years ago might actually be more frequent now. And that is why, in a lot of cases, the different organizations that handle that update those, the considerations based off of newer precipitation data. But by it being called a 100-year event, it has about a 1% chance to occur.
Thanks, Jeff. I do have a hand raised right now, so we're going to unmute Michael Wazinski. So Michael, we're going to go ahead and unmute you, and then you'll be able to unmute yourself to ask the question. Let's see here. Oh, Michael, did we lose you here?
No, Ryan, he's on an older version of Zoom.
Got it. All right. Hi, I'm Mike Wolchinski with Pangea Environmental LLC. And I'm a retired DEQ senior geologist, so I appreciate the position you guys are in on this. I just want to comment that I've heard a lot of comments, seen a lot about what's happening on the surface as far as infiltration and things like that, but I haven't seen any geological information as to whether the subsurface can continue to accept the amount of water or what the relationship is between the basins on the southwest part of the property and the prairie fens. And also, what about the water quality? I've seen, sediment being addressed, but, no mention of road salts or petroleum hydrocarbons or anything else that is going to be going into that prairie fen, which Michigan State lists as a rather rare feature in Michigan anymore. So it's not just a regular wetland we're looking at here. This is a more threatened environment. And I think it needs a higher level of review than their typical development. Comments?
All right. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Do you have any?
I'm
Thoughts?
not sure what the question was within there, but I'll try to answer some of that, I guess. So my understanding is that, or at least as what has been provided within the application, we did not require them to provide us with a more detailed geological study of like the substrates with handling that. I should have maybe clarified earlier before the presentation from Brett, but Eagle's jurisdiction within this matter is looking at the discharge of the stormwater basins to those wetlands. That's where our authority lies. Now, part of your question, Michael, kind of related to, other pollutant discharges. Sediment's always usually the one that's referred to, but yeah, what about other pollutants? That is part of what we'll be reviewing within this application with the design of those stormwater basins. So this is within an MS4 area. They are required to design their stormwater basins within Livingston County. The requirement is at a 1/2 inch first flush. So they control the first 1/2 inch of rain over a 24-hour period. And the thought process with that is that if it meets that criteria, it's not just sediment, but all pollutants will be controlled prior to release and allowed to settle. But that is kind of a core of what we'll be reviewing within this application. Is this designed to manage not just sediment, but other pollutants prior to discharge to these wetlands?
Thank you. I'll come back later.
Okay, I can, I'm gonna go to a question that's typed in and then I can go back to you, Michael. Okay, so one of the questions that's in the Q&A is, since long-term water quality is being discussed, having a baseline at this point in time would be critical to establish whether changes have or are not occurring in the neighborhood wetlands. Could this be done and who would be responsible for having it done?
That is a very big question. What I would say is some of that can be handled through, Eagle has a non-point source division that works with local municipalities like townships and counties to work on broader watershed management plans. And I think this would probably fit within that. However, the question, could this be done? Who would be responsible? That's a good question. Usually that would have to come from the local, property owners out there, or, if there is a watershed management group that could work on that. But it's a difficult thing because a lot of these wetlands are on private properties, getting rights to get onto there, do baseline studies, things like that. But I think a lot of that could be addressed through, the non-point source watershed management planning process. It's not a bad thing to think about having done. It's unfortunately not something we can require as part of this application at this time, though.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, I'm going to actually go through one more typed in and then we'll go back to Michael if you have additional questions. Who is responsible for reviewing the invasive plants on an annual basis, and who is paying to take care of their removal? Does that include plants that come up in our wetland? And this is the Conservancy.
My assumption would be that would be the property owners and the developer. Mr. Wilson and the development group would be responsible for doing that if that is their plan for managing invasive species. As far as the plants that may appear on the Land Conservancy, that'd be something that would have to be worked out between the Land Conservancy and the developer.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. All right, and then Michael, do you have another question before we move on to the hearing? portion, or if anybody else has questions.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question, either who is on the phone or at the webinar here? Either you can either type that in, we'll give you a couple more seconds in case you change your mind or someone's typing in, or you can raise your virtual hand. At this point, I'm not seeing any others right now. All right, so with that, going once, going twice, we will move on to the next part of this hearing. And this is actually going to be the part where you can make your comment for the record. But before we do that, I just want to identify other ways to submit an official comments. If you didn't want to make a comment tonight, you can make a comment via My Waters, and I believe the link is going to be in the link is going to be in the chat. It's going to show up in the chat, or it's going to be in the public notice where you can access My Waters to make a comment, or you can do it by mail. And I'm going to read this off for anyone on the phone. It's to Eagle, it's EGLE, Water Resources Division, Lansing District Office. That's at 525 West Allegan Street, spelled Allegan. And that's P.O. Box 30473, Lansing, Michigan, 48909. And we'll have this screen up a little bit later too, if you're writing it down or need to reference it again. The screen will be back. And the comment period after the public hearing, it'll be open for 10 days. And so it'll end on April 3rd, 2022. So we're going to go ahead and start the public hearing portion. You can make an official comment for the record, or you can make it one of these other ways, or I say in addition, if you have other things to add, you can submit supplemental information via one of these other ways. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and invite you, Jeff, to read the opening statement and kick off this portion of the public hearing.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jeff Pierce. I am the district representative in the Water Resources Division of the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. And I will be serving as the hearing officer for this public hearing on the EGLE submission number HPC-WH30-EVCJD. With me tonight is Ryan Blazik, who you've already met, as well as Mary Vandelon, who is my supervisor, Brittany Beavers, who's an environmental quality analyst within our district, and then Joel Roseberry, who is helping out with operating the hearing tonight. Our agenda tonight is to describe how this is going to work. I will begin with some background information about why we are here. I will then describe the purpose of the hearing and how your comments will be used. Following that, I will outline the procedures under which we will take your comments and then describe what will happen after tonight's hearing. It will then be time for you to provide comments, and we will spend the majority of the time tonight listening to those comments. At the end of the hearing, I will read the closing statement. So by way of background information, the Water Resources Division is responsible for administering a variety of programs that help protect inland lakes and streams, wetlands, floodplains, sand dunes, and the Great Lakes. These programs regulate certain activities such as dredging or filling a lake, stream, or wetland, construction of a dam, constructing a marina, placing shore protection or constructing docks, and building in a designated critical sand dune area, wetland, or floodplain. The law governing these responsibilities is the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. It's 1994, Public Act 451 as amended. We are here tonight because Kevin Wilson of Breda LLC and Design, Develop, Construct Enterprises LLC has proposed the following. Constructing a multifamily residential development that will include construction of 2 stormwater detention basins with an outlet discharging to regulated wetland for stormwater management. In order for a permit to be granted, Eagle must find that the proposed activities described in the public notice meet certain criteria set by Part 303, the Wetlands Protection of Act 451. In general, we must consider the effect of the proposed project on wetlands. When reviewing an application for a permit under the provisions of Part 303, Eagle is charged to make the following indications as required by Section 303.11 of Part 303. A permit for an activity listed in Section 303.04 shall not be approved unless the department determines that issuance of a permit is in the public interest, that the permit is necessary to realize the benefits derived from the activity, and that the activity is otherwise lawful. A permit shall not be issued unless it is shown that an unacceptable disruption will not result to the aquatic resources, and a permit shall not be issued unless the applicant also shows either of the following. A, that a proposed activity is primarily dependent upon being located in a wetland, or B, that a feasible and prudent alternative does not exist. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to give anyone interested in the proposed development an opportunity to provide information that Eagle can use in making the decision whether or not to issue a permit. Please recognize that Eagle can only use the information you provide if it relates to the criteria that Eagle must use in making a decision. Some of you may simply want to express your support or opposition to the project. We will be happy to make note of your position, but please understand that Eagle is by law not allowed to base our decision on whether or not there is widespread support or opposition to the project. In just a moment, I will outline the procedures we will use for taking your comments, but before I do so, I need to mention that the notice of this hearing was published in the Livingston County Daily Press and Argus on March 11, 2022. As we discussed at the beginning of this informational session, if you have a comment to provide, raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. To ensure that hearing is conducted in a fair manner, we will follow these steps. First, the applicant and/or consultant has already had an opportunity to describe the proposed project. Second, we will then call on those who have indicated in their registration that they would like to speak. After that, we will call on all those that raise their hand in their Zoom toolbar that they would like to make a comment, and if they haven't already been called upon. As a reminder, if you are participating in this hearing via telephone only, follow the directions of the moderator on how to identify that you would like to make a comment. You may also submit your comments to Eagle via MyWater's email or US mail, which Ryan had shown the process for that earlier. We're going to show that again in a little bit. When all the comments have been completed, we will ask if anyone else would like to make a statement. When your name is called, your microphone will be unmuted. As you begin your comments, please state your name and any group or association you may represent. Each person will be given 4 minutes to make their comments. We will indicate to you when you have a minute left. Please begin wrapping up your comments and end within the allotted time. If need be, we will indicate when your time is ended. I ask that we all be courteous and respectful to one another tonight. Please also recognize that Eagle staff is here tonight to provide a fair opportunity for you to express your comments on the proposed project and to listen to those comments. How will the information be used? This hearing is being recorded and your comments will be part of the information Eagle will consider in making its decision on whether or not to issue a permit on the proposed project. The public comment period for this public hearing is open for 10 days from the date of this hearing. That'll end on April 3rd, 2022. Additionally, information and comments submitted in writing during the 10-day public comment period will also be considered in Eagle's decision. Following the close of the public comment period, Eagle will make a decision to either issue a permit for the project as proposed or with modifications, or send a letter of denial. You may find out what that decision is by checking the Eagle MyWater's website and searching for the application number, which we will show on the slides here at the end. Thank you for your attention. We will begin calling names for those who have indicated they would like to make a statement now.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. As Jeff mentioned, we have a list here of people during registration who identified they want to make a comment. We'll go through those people first. I'll list the name and then I will list the next person in line so you know who's up next. And then once we get through all of those names, we'll go to the raised hands. So you can raise your hand at any time though. And then you'll have your opportunity to make a comment. Everybody tonight will have an opportunity. We're going to have, as Jeff had mentioned, 4 minutes per person. I'll give you a 1 minute heads up when you get, when you're 1 minute away from your 4 minutes being up. When you're unmuted and you're giving your comments, again, please, if you have any affiliation, you're welcome to identify it and provide your name and who you're affiliated with. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get rolling. Our first person on my list here is Kevin Wilson. So Kevin, we're going to unmute you. It looks like you're unmuted on our end. You can unmute yourself and start whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Ryan. Brett from Noack and Faust did a great job in explaining our site and our position on it. And really, I don't have anything further to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we actually have Brett Buchholz on our list. Brett, did you have anything else to add, or did you say everything you needed to in your previous statement?
Nothing else from me.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Brett. So after Brett is Sarah Thomas. So Sarah, we are going to unmute you on our end. Looks like you're unmuted. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and start whenever you're ready.
Great, thank you. I'm Sarah Thomas with the Livingston Land Conservancy. Our biggest concern is the fen wetland that we have, which is, as was already spoken, is a rare ecosystem. We had a botanical review early on, so we have evidence that it's there and that there's unusual and unique plants. One of the specialists on this ecosystem is the Michigan Natural Features Inventory. And they say it's a very vulnerable system and that the groundwater that supports it is very dependent on the flow rate and volume. And so it strongly influences the type of vegetation that will occur there. So if there's less groundwater, it changes, or if there's more groundwater. Protecting, and I'm kind of reading this from the Michigan Natural Features Inventory, protecting hydrology is the most important thing to do in maintaining the vegetative structure in a fen. The woodlands in an upland that support fens are important because they allow that infiltration. Unfortunately, the woodlands that supported our fen, or some of it anyway, has been removed. Impervious surfaces contribute warm, nutrient, and sediment-laden surface water runoff, which is detrimental to the fen's uniqueness. So this is a big deal. No one really can confirm to us that this will stay intact. We feel very strongly that we should not have to bear this burden of a development happening and then our landscape being affected by it. It's first of all, it's not fair, and it's technically not our problem. We have every right to want to protect this. That's our duty. This land was donated to us, and we have the commitment to the donors to protect it. And it's a rare system. The whole nature preserve is unique, and it makes it very unsettling to think that the stormwater will be totally changed in how it gets into our wetlands. You know, we did provide early on a possible alternative, and that was we were willing to place a conservation easement along the very steep slope that was wooded. And that would have allowed the developer to put trails in for the residents. And that would also have protected our nature preserve significantly. Yes, that would have meant having a smaller development, you know, with less impervious surface. But there was an alternative provided, and no one really wanted to discuss it. And so that's really kind of unfortunate. We were more than willing to try to work and do what we could to protect our property, but also work and you know, be productive in helping the neighbor with what they wanted to do.
You have
So,
about a minute left, Sarah.
okay. So thank you for this. Again, we're very concerned. We hope this is taken very seriously, and we feel that the impact to our fen is real and problematic. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
The next person on my list is also the last person I have is John Malik. John, we're gonna unmute you and then you'll be able to make your comment.
Hello.
Looks like you, yep, you can go ahead and start when you're ready.
Hello. I am concerned about this process, having observed one for the last 12 years, basically go down the drain in a quite a dramatic way. And it's very difficult that best laid plans in the drawing stages and intentions and documentation and studies is also a prerequisite for the people with their boots on the ground to become a part of that system. And I think it's vitally important to maintain the integrity and teach the people who are coming onto that site to do work to become more sensitive to it and not see everything as something to plow under. Speaking from experience, this is not something I would want anybody else to go through, watching your own property dissolve into a big quagmire of multiple violations. And what are you gonna do about it? Well, it's already happened. So I think that a stronger position needs to come into play for something so vital. And one of the ways I'm thinking would help that would be to insist that a third party that is not affiliated with the design team or the owner's intentions, but to have an engineering firm manage the on-site reporting of the tasks and the conditions of the site, so that somebody is not in a position where they could design it and report on the validity of it, and then get pictures showing something quite contrary to the reports that have been submitted, and then do nothing about that. So I would be strongly recommending and insisting that some other party other than the design team have somebody that is fully skilled in doing the reporting and will report to all of the necessary parties. And if any violations come up, it's clear and concise what's going on, and not basically protecting the designer for the sheer problems that are encountered on site. So I'm concerned about enforcement along with the maintaining the integrity of the site. And I think that there needs to be some arrangements met ahead of everything else to instill in the developer a kind of conscientious position that they will do what they need to do to correct whatever inappropriate action has taken place, and to provide a complete solution of getting rid of that problem should one come up. I think that a guarantee of some sort would be appropriate, because there are a lot of hidden conditions and
About one minute left, John.
a lot of hidden conditions and practices that have been involved in a way that was not the best well-run project. And I think that this could be turned into something better, but it's going to take everybody's efforts to maintain the quality of the system and to make sure that every step is taken to ensure that that happens from top to bottom. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So that is everyone on my list. So if you're on the phone or if you're on the webinar tonight, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you in turn to make your comment. And again, if you're on the phone, you can select #2 and it'll raise your hand in Zoom. And so then what we'll do is when we call your number, last 4 digits of your number, you can unmute, you'll be able to give your comment when we unmute you. So with that, anybody who still wants to make a comment, please raise your hand and we'll call on you in turn. So the first person with their hand raised is Katie Schluter. Katie, you're unmuted on our end. You can go ahead and start whenever you're ready. Katie, you're gonna have to unmute your microphone on your end as well.
Got it.
Got
Can
it.
you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. So as it's been established, the preserve consists of high quality ecosystems, including but not limited to the rare fen meadow wetland and emergent meadow wetland complex that are held in the Livingston Land Conservancy for the public trust in perpetuity. And I would like to respectfully request and insist that there be an environmental impact study on how this permit and the proposed development will impact the rare protected regulated wetland natural features of the adjacent Livingston Land Conservancy property. Some of the questions that could be answered by such a impact statement or study could be with soil erosion, what are the impacts of the regulated wetlands from the removal of the 1,000 trees on steep 80-foot slopes that lead to the Livingston Land Conservancy property, as well as the grading and construction of the extensive stacked series of 10 to 15-foot retaining walls that are physically needed to support the structures on these extremely steep slopes. Also, water runoff quality and quantity, who is going to monitor the flow rate and the volume of the stormwater coming off the development, especially over time when storm systems fail and there's really not anyone who has authority over private stormwater systems, not the township, not the drain commission. And when things fail, governments are very loath to ask homeowners to go through expensive maintenance projects in order to fix these things. The quantity issues are, how will this, the rare fens and the sandy loams that are currently infiltrate stormwater are severely graded or covered over with impervious surfaces. What about the invasives, phragmites that come with stormwaters? They just do, everybody knows that, and that they can completely change the hydrology of wetlands. The quantity or quality issues are, of course, what happens when stormwater comes down on higher temps, and they contain non-point source pollution, salts, sediments, other things that come off of impervious surfaces. And is the proposed development environmentally appropriate? Who is responsible if it degrades our property? Everybody has a right to the use of their property, but the land use of one property cannot come at the expense of the existing land use of an adjacent property. So that is where I'm coming from. And a recent anecdote was that, we had a PUD agreement in a local township adjacent. Everything was in order. We have agreements on how things are going to be handled on a property. The developer has since sold the property, has a new landowner on that property. The PUD agreement is not being met. There's outside storage, there's impacts on the wetlands, there's gated areas that are ungated. And when I-
About 1 minute, Katie.
Yep, when I talked to the township about it, unfortunately with COVID and everything else, people aren't really holding businesses accountable because they're suffering, and nobody wants to put hardships on them. And so these things are not going to be fixed, not right away. We'll have to always be good neighbors and work with developers and that kind of thing. But nobody really has the authority over these stormwater systems that are privately held. So the time is to react on the beginning of a project to try to make sure that there are steps to figure out what are the potential impacts and how best to avoid them. I thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
All right, so next up, I have Paul Tullikengas. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. Paul, you're up. You can unmute on your end and start whenever you're ready.
Okay, calling in from my phone. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, so I was one of the primary site designers on this project, along with Brett, who spoke earlier from Noack and Frous. And I guess I just wanted to put my 2 cents in here, just regarding the overall site as a whole. With the site design, we followed all applicable standards, and even per Mr. Wilson's direction, exceeded a lot of the stormwater standards for both quantity and quality of the stormwater storage in both locations on site. And I guess I wanted to just touch on a couple comments earlier. regarding the discharge into the adjacent wetlands. I mean, I think the only way to feasibly do a site on this property is you have to provide the detention storage that we're doing, but also discharge to that wetland, because you don't want to cut off the source for that, a lot of the upland, stormwater runoff that is going to that wetland now. So what we're doing is we're storing and exceeding the volume requirements, treating both both pre and post detention, and basically just in general meeting and exceeding the applicable design standards for the site. And that's just basically per direction from Mr. Wilson. He wants to be a good neighbor, and I believe that he's going to do a great job on this site. So that's all I have.
All right, thanks for the comment, Paul. So next up, Susan Kelly. You're unmuted on our end. Yep, you're unmuted. You can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'd like to just make the comment that I would like to see Eagle deny this permit. There's several things that you mentioned that it is required. One is this is not in the public interest, as it's going to be harmfully impacting the adjacent property and some fragile protected lands that Livingston County residents have, as volunteers, been protecting for a long time, and we want to see it continue to be protected. This is externalizing the cost of this development to be using another adjacent property basically to manage their stormwater. And I'd just like to also address the previous speaker's comment about exceeding the standards. I don't see how you can exceed this. They've exceeded the standards when it's required that they use the adjacent land to manage their stormwater. This just does not meet the requirements of Eagle to award this wetlands permit, and I think you guys should deny it. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the comment. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? That's everybody who I have right now who had their hand raised and who I had on my list. So I'll give it a couple seconds here in case anybody wants to raise their hand. But while I'm doing that, I also want to mention, I am going to also identify again that slide that had the other ways to make a comment in case somebody wants to write something in kind of in follow-up to this. So with that, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to invite Jeff. Do you want to read the closing statement for the hearing tonight?
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you all for your comments and cooperation. We do appreciate your interest in this proposed project and that you took the time to be here tonight. As we indicated at the beginning of the hearing, you may submit additional written comments until April 3rd, 2022. Following the close of this comment period, we will consider all comments received and make a decision on the proposed project at that time. Just to remind you, for those who might still want to submit a comment, comments can be submitted through My Waters via the link that is posted right there. Email, I'm not sure if my email is on there, but we can give that out if we need to. And then US mail, although I would discourage, I don't want to say discourage you from using US mail. It just might take longer to get to us. The quickest way to get the comments to us is through My Waters or via email. At this point, the hearing is closed. I want to thank you all again. And if you have any other questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me to discuss that further. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And I should also mention, I think Jeff's email is on the next slide, so we'll leave that up. But before we do, in case there's people on the phone, again, the address in case you do want to mail comments, Eagle Water Resources Division, Lansing District Office, 525 West Allegan Street, PO Box 30473, Lansing, Michigan 48909. And this is My Waters, like Jeff had mentioned, submission HPC WH30 EVCJD. And so if you have any other questions, and Jeff's email is up here too, who to contact us for the questions. Jeff's phone number for those on the phone is 517-416-4297. And his, I'm going to spell this out, his email is Pierce J2, and so that's PIERCEJ2 at michigan.gov. And that's spelled out Michigan, MICHIGAN.gov. Or Mary Vanderlaan, who is also on the line, who's a Lansing district supervisor. Her phone number is 517-243-6948, or email at vanderlaanm@michigan.gov. And so with that, I'm wondering, Mary, do you have any closing comments or anything you want to say in follow-up to the hearing tonight?
I thank the people for coming, and we will certainly consider all of the comments that we've heard tonight before, when we make our final decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you, and Jeff, for being the hearings officer. Thank you all who made comments and everyone who participated in the question and answer session. So with that, the session's closed. The webinar is over, but I will mention the recording will be available on our Eagles YouTube channel here in a couple days, and we'll follow up with an email with a link to that recording. So with that, I hope everybody enjoys the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.